everybody for having me, and we're going to go through the whole process about exhibiting dahlias, but you can't exhibit your dahlias without a show. You can't do a show without a show chairman. So I'd like to dedicate this presentation to Dave Kapp, and also ask that we just have a moment of silence before we start. Okay, I can see him out there, literally. Anyway.
Dave was our show chair for about 20 years and did all 4 shows, well, at least the 3 shows, Cuyahoga, Summit, and Navatinas. And fortunately, he did take notes, 6 bins of which, cards of which I have, and trying to sort through them. So I'm pretty much going to at least try to share each year, take good notes so that next year will be somebody else.
Well, the first thing you do when you're going to exhibit is you have to be familiar with the show schedule. I can't emphasize that enough. I just grabbed the top of my show schedule folder, and these are all show schedules from different shows that I've attended. And you can see some of them are long, some of them are real short, but every single one of these is different. So in other words, ADS does not have a standard show schedule. So for you to know what's going on, you have to read this. And so I recommend reading show schedules. Go ahead, Jess. American Dahlia Society. Sorry. And Jerry was kind enough to bring show schedules here for our next 2 shows, and this is a great example of what I'm talking about, because this is the Cuyahoga Fair, and a lot of you are going to be exhibiting as novices. And listen to the Cuyahoga Fair's, I just got this today, definition of a novice. A novice shall be any person who has never won a blue ribbon at any dahlia show. I do, but I'm going to just make my point here. But if you look at the DSO show, these are both our shows. This one, if you've won a blue ribbon, you're not a novice anymore. Oh, no. See, she didn't read the show schedule. And this is the kind of stuff that happens. Now, and if you think somebody won't call you on that, and say, she won a blue ribbon and she's exhibiting in novice. And in the DSO show, our Summit Mall show, here's the definition of a novice. They define a novice as someone who has exhibited dahlias for 3 years. So there's quite a difference, regardless of how many blue ribbons you won. So you're a novice at the Summit Mall show for 3 years, regardless of how successful you've been as an exhibitor. So that's just one example of why it's so important to read these show schedules before you go, so you know where you're going, what you are. And the other thing that's different in all these is once you graduate from novice, like Jess is going to have to at Cuyahoga, some of these schedules have your class is depending on how many hills you grow. And some shows have it divided into 0 to 50, 50 to 100, 100 to 200, more than 200. Some of them say they count the hills. You have to count how many BBs, Bs, As, and double As. Those are how many hills. Other shows just say 75 hills. They don't care if they're miniatures or palms. So you got to if you're going to do this right, you got to know which section you're going to be in.
They know what a hill is.
A hill of dahlias is considered one stake with dahlias in it. Whether you plant 2 tubers at that stake, again, it's usually defined in the show schedule. So you got to read your show schedule. The other thing I thought was important is there's things like Flower of the Year that you may not even know for some of these shows. And so if you're growing that flower, you have to have in the back of your mind that I may be able to use that flower in the Flower of the Year category. There's originator awards, like Ron will sometimes do the best Baron. Sometimes I'll do the best Jackie Evangelista or Evangelista dahlia. I can remember one story. I'll try not to stare him down, but I had a $50 or $100 reward for the best Jackie Evangelista. And there weren't very many entries. And I'm walking through the show table, and there was a really nice Jackie on there. It wasn't good enough to get out of the section, but it was by far the best Jackie in the building. And so I opened up the tag to see who it was, and I went up to him and I said, why didn't you enter that dahlia? You know, it's a $100 dahlia. I didn't know there was a special class. So you got to read the show schedules, okay, for that reason. And then a lot of these shows have really what I would call fun categories. Like they may have 3 BBs, all yellow but different forms, or 3A dahlias with 3 different forms regardless of color. So you keep that in the back of your mind too. So show schedules are very important. They also have things in them like height limits, how your wedges, how far above the container they can be. And unfortunately, we have judges that will disqualify entries if they're a little over or the wedges aren't to their liking. So you got to know that, okay? Any questions about show schedules?
There aren't any special awards in Cuyahoga. But if you look on the next to last page of the summit one, down at the bottom, you'll see 70-1. See that? 70-2, so on. Those are the $5 ones for the Summit Mall show. That's our annual show. You see Jackie, Tony has $50 on the best Jackie. Ron has a couple in there for his best introductions, and he has a ton of introductions. The question is, how do we know what's your introduction? Anything with Baron on it, B-A-R-O-N, is one run. And then Harriet and Jim from Youngstown have the best Marcella belief and so on. So that's usually where you'll find, at least in some of these that are put together, is where you find the special ones.
Yeah.
I have one question, and this might be stupid.
No,
Do you
stupid.
sit here, like I don't know the names of these, but do you sit here when you're starting and say, okay, I am going to show a Aunt Dorothy. I am going to grow that Aunt Dorothy. I am going to show that Aunt Dorothy. Or when the show's coming, do you go through, like when you're saying that it would matter how many hills you have, is that because you just go through and say, ooh, this one might show nice, this one might show nice? Like, how do you know, like, do you set out before the season starts, I'm going to show this?
I start out before the season starts knowing what grows well in my garden and how many of them I'm going to put in. And each dahlia in my exhibition garden, I feel I have a chance to go to the head table with. So I don't grow anything that I can't put on the head table in my exhibition.
Okay.
Make sense? Doesn't make sense. I know, it's crazy. Show schedules are usually online. You can get them online, and a lot of the shows. Who hasn't seen a entry tag? Most of you, yeah. So I'm gonna have this in your hand because I think we should go through this. Who else hasn't seen one? Okay. Entry tags. This is what they look like. So rather than me screaming up there and having you look at something that small, okay? These have to be filled out, and they should be filled out correctly. They're not complicated at all. You only need a few things. The only way you can fill them out is to read the show schedule, because you're going to have to figure out which section you're in. You're in the novice section, you're in the small grower, intermediate grower, large grower, open. It's all described in the show schedule. So that's your section. Varies from show to show. The class, you have to have one of these, because this is the names of the dahlias and the numbers. So if you don't have one of these, you have to find somebody that has one that can help you out. American Dahlia Society, when you join, everybody gets this. Some of the old varieties that aren't commonly shown anymore are in what we call a composite. This is the big super listing from like 19 forever. And so these are all the dahlias. Usually someone at the show will have this. And then I usually bring a Swan Island catalog because so many people are growing those, because I'm usually on the classification committee and I have to figure out, I have to classify them. and they will classify them for you, and you'll give you a class number. But most of the dahlias, like all these that aren't seedlings, are in this. So that's your second.
Not for Cuyahoga.
Yeah, I've never been to Cuyahoga. But I will be there this year to help all you folks who have never. I'm just going to help you stage, okay, and answer questions. And then you have the name of the flower. So then you put whatever it is, like if it's Jackie Evangelista or.
Tony, could you fill one of them out so you pick one of your balloons?
Sure.
Pass it around.
Sure. We could do that. Say I put section 2, say class 6007. Name of thing is Jackie's Red Devil. So this is a completely filled out tag, and this is all you have to do. So I wrote my section number, the class number, the name of the dahlia, and then I put an address sticker underneath so they know who grew it. See? The little red one here, not this. This is Jackie's Red Devil, this little one here. So you could pass that around. That's a filled out tag. Thanks, Randy. That's a good idea. Excellent idea. Other thing you can do with show tags is use them to hide your, and we'll try to demonstrate that if we can, but you can use them to hide your wedges. So you can make a more pleasing exhibit. Any questions on show tags? Okay, so you've looked at the show schedule. You may even have some tags at home that you think you can fill out ahead of time, which really helps. So you don't have to do that at the show with water on the table. That's a good tip. So when do you cut your dahlias for the show? When are you going to cut them so that they're at their peak? Well, morning is the best time. Usually 24 hours before the show. So if the shows, and most of them are Saturday morning, the big ones especially I like to cut on Friday morning. The smaller stuff, if it's a cloudy day and we've had a lot of rain, I'll cut my small stuff Thursday night. But they're fully hydrated the best in the morning before the sun comes up and hits them again. So morning is the ideal time to cut. And like I said, 24 to 36 hours before the show. Back when I had a better condition, sometimes I would actually cut 2 days before the show and let them condition, and they even do better. But if I do that now, especially with the early shows, some of them will start to go down a little bit. Okay, the other big tip I can tell you is when you cut a bloom, go ahead. We're going to talk about that. Okay, so when you make that cut, you want to cut them at a slight angle. You don't have to go all the way to 45, but you don't want to make it perfectly horizontal. And there's a reason for that, because if you take a perfectly horizontal cut, this doesn't happen very often, but if you take a dahlia with a perfectly horizontal cut and push it down in a bucket to the bottom, every once in a while you'll clog up all those tubules that take up water, and you'll look and you'll have buckets of dahlias, and you'll look and there'll be one and it'll just be down completely. And it's down completely because it can't take up water. So you got to stop the car, pull the bloom out, untie it, cut it in an angle, and usually I'll poke a little hole in the stem so the water can go all the way up. I get higher water pressure. So cut them at a slight angle, okay? That doesn't happen very often, but when it does, it's not good. Preservative. I've used it. My stuff does better without preservatives. I've used Floral Life and Crystal and all that. Anybody else have any comments on that in here? Cut flower people? But for me, I just use plain water, chlorine out of the tap. Any other questions on when you're going to cut your flowers? The question's already been asked, where do you hold them? Coolest place you have. Another reason I didn't want to cut these too early is I didn't have any place cool to cut them unless I was going to bring them into the air conditioning into our kitchen. And I didn't want the cats looking at them and batting some of the petals that aren't good, telling me you should pull that. So I cut them this morning and put them right in the car. But during show season, what I do is I leave my garage door open at night, because usually by then we're getting 60s and 50s at night and it's cool. So I'll cut those dahlias, I'll put them in the garage where the critters can't get at them, and I don't get too many insects in my garage. You can leave them outside if it's cool, but I don't know how many times I've cut a bloom and then went back over to put the next one in the bucket, and there's a grasshopper sitting on top of that bloom that I just cut, you know? So, I mean, you can't get bugs after you cut them, too. So I would recommend putting them in the coolest part of your house. I used to use a fruit cellar and put all my dahlias downstairs in the fruit cellar and then bring them all back upstairs and load them up. I'm too old for that. That doesn't happen. So that's what I would recommend. The coolest, if you have to take them in the house, that's fine. Any questions on where to hold them? You good with that? Transporting. You can't have the blooms touching. You know, the reason that the big ones, besides breaking, is you want these things pretty safe, stable, because when you're riding in the car and you're hitting those bumps and you're going down those freeway bumps, a rhythm develops, and you'll look in the back and all the dahlias will be going. And if you've got canes on them, they're only going like this. But if you don't, you know what they're doing? You'll look back there and you'll just go, God, they're swaying, you know, like they're in a mosh pit or something, you know. So you got to have, you should support them good, and you don't want them, you can see even if these move when I'm driving, no bloom is going to touch, they're not going to touch each other, because when they touch each other, they damage each other. Leaves touching, believe it or not, almost all the shows that are close, you can let the leaves touch. If you go far, like more than 6 to 8 hours, I would recommend, especially if you have some really good blooms, putting tissue paper between the sets of leaves so that they can't touch each other. I went to Minneapolis. It was 15 hours of driving back in 1991 for a national show, and I had probably the best flowers I ever had. And I got there and I looked, and I had burn on some of my foliage. I mean, where the foliage from 15 hours of freeway actually blackened where they were touching. I mean, it wasn't too extensive, and it didn't hurt me too bad. But you don't have to worry about the leaves if you're only going a day's drive. But if you're going more than a day, they'll burn if they touch. Another really important thing, and this is from experience again, these buckets, I have 1 gallon and 2 gallon marks on them. A lot of this was for when I was putting preservative in, so I knew how many gallons I had. But it also tells me when I have my big dahlias, they get 2 full gallons of water. Not because they need 2 gallons of water, but if you don't, these big dahlias, you go around the bend, they'll go right over. So with 2 gallons, I got 16, 17 pounds of weight. And the cans aren't going to, there's nothing worse than going to a show and having cans go over. I was going to the national show in Washington, D.C. long time ago when I was showing Alfred C. And we drove all the way to Washington, D.C. and got off at the exit ramp. And it was a pretty good curve. I was kind of excited. Finally made it, you know. I took it a little too fast. I had a can go over. I looked in the rearview mirror, just right over. So from now on, I always put plenty of water.
Tony, let's say how you attach the keys.
Yeah, I was going to do that, Jer, when I take it apart, and I'll show them. But you know, I can do that. I can do that now too. It's not going to be bad because we'll use the first bloom. I'll just take it apart. That's probably a reasonable order here. I have a spider? That's okay. So what I do, and you'll be able to see these cans when they're empty. I like this stuff here that's relatively cheap. You can get it. It's this coated wire, this green plastic. It's real easy, flexible. You can cut it in long things, and I can wrap that around the stem and put it on these little dowel rods that I have coming through here. So that goes right on there. Now see, this is too short. I mean, you can't cut a dahlia like that and expect this foliage to be okay. See, I don't have enough stem. So I brought this particularly to illustrate something, and we'll get around to that here in just a minute. But I was going to tell you what to do when you get to the show. First thing you want to do is try to find a good table in good light, because you can't properly examine your blooms and groom them if it's in the dark. Not unless you have really good eyes and you're really young. Otherwise, you just can't see. So like this is good. It would be better if that one was on so I could see what I'm doing. So I always look for the table that has the most light and is the furthest out of the way so I'm not distracted. All right. You want good light? We always fill our containers. Jackie usually does this. We always get these containers. And I took one here. And see, this is the containers for the vases we use at most of our shows come in 3 pieces. They have this piece, then they have a bottom, and they have this place where you can put your tag that nobody ever uses. You ever seen anybody use those, Randy? I mean, that's what this slit's for, in case you're wondering, what's that slit for? And then this thing goes on top. This snaps on, and but you got to put the water in first, or before you start the stage. And I can't tell you how many times, and the senior judges in here will tell you, time after time, how many times you'll move a bloom and go, if it's not already fallen over, but there's no water in it. They forgot to put water in it. And it starts to go down. And here's a critical thing too. And this is back to the point about cutting with long stems. Feel inside this vase or look, and you can see that it has kind of a frog. And what you really want, you want your bloom long enough so that it hits that frog. Does that make sense? There's little nubs there so that bloom will, when it hits that nub, it's not going to go like this. So it's kind of a little plastic florist frog built into the vase. All right.
So do all shows when you go and have all this stuff there?
Yeah, and that's what.
All vases, all the tags, show tags. And we have extra.
So you fill your containers. You'll have an idea if you fill out your show tags ahead of time, or you cut your flowers, you can count how many flowers you have. And you fill up what you think you're going to need for vases. Get those all set for you, so you don't have to worry about that. And then you got to get your wedges. And that's kind of an art in and of itself. That's these guys. And I tell you, that's the biggest problem for me is they never seem to be the size I need. So I usually have a huge pile of wedges in front of me when I'm staging. Usually at least double that, but that'll do for now. So that's what you get. That's what you get when you go to the show. You want to get a nice table with an adequate work area, good light, fill your containers, and get your wedges. Any questions about at the show?
And there are smaller vases.
Yeah, see we have smaller ones here, and Jess had some little, she has those little white ones. Every show's different. They'll have smaller vases usually. Next thing, you don't have to do this now, but eventually if you get serious with this, you're going to need a toolkit. You're going to need something that you can just throw in the car, and it's got everything you're going to need to do your grooming and your staging. I usually like to have a towel because we get messy and we get water on the table. I don't like working in, a pond. So we usually take our towels. I usually take distilled water in a spray bottle, so I can spray my blooms if I have to groom them, because they don't, they move better when they're wet, not as much friction. And then I have, what? Yeah, if you have to wet the leaves and clean your leaves, you need water to do that. And clean water, distilled water is not going to leave any residue, but most city water doesn't leave residue anyway. These are just, for multiples, these are just little, these are little mini bamboo skewers I got someplace, somebody was giving away, that you can put in the front of a multiple and then put your tag on. Or you can use Starbucks coffee plugs, or you can just use plain stirrers that you pick up when you're having coffee. But that's what these are for, in case you're wondering. We usually bring a sponge, because a lot of times we'll have leaves that have little residue on them. We want to clean them, so we'll usually have a sponge with us. In the fall, we usually bring a little thing of milk to wipe off the powdery mildew. Whole milk works best. It shines up the leaf. It's perfectly legal. And it takes the mildew right off. So milk, distilled water, and I am so glad. I've had this since last year, and I put it in my box. Somehow I went home with this thing. This is one of our show lids. So here it comes back to normal. And then I always have a tape measure. A lot of these shows have height requirements. And you want to be able to go from the bottom of that vase and make sure you're not exceeding the regulation. They're all different. You got to read the schedule. Our show, we have, can't be higher than 36 inches unless you need more than 36 inches to show the two sets of leaves that you want to show, if that makes sense. So in other words, you couldn't show 3 sets of leaves and have a 37-inch entry. It should be disqualified. But you can show 2 sets if it's 37.
You only need one.
You only need 1. We're going to talk a lot about how many sets of leaves to leave. And then I usually have a sharp pair of scissors. I've got tweezers or things to pull petals out with, or to grab little bugs that got in there when I didn't see. So just a lot of odds and ends, some brushes. And this is something that what you'll do is you'll accumulate this over time. You'll know what you want. I put some Q-tips in here. Here's another tape measure that got in here. I usually have multiple cutters and usually some really sharp knives. I happen to use a lot of scalpels because they're so sharp, and I can remove spur leaf really cleanly with them. Okay, so those are tools. No, I don't think they can get them. All right, now we're down to the nitty-gritty here. We can talk about staging. I thought it was important, though, to give you a rundown of what it takes to get to the point where you're going to put a bloom in a vase. And that's where we're at now. So what I did, I went through my garden and I picked some blooms that I thought would be able to demonstrate some principles. Because you can't just, there's so many variables when you get to a show. But see this, I brought this is a seedling of mine. It grows kind of weird, but I brought this just to show you. Obviously I didn't cut the stem long enough, and I'm lucky I didn't crack these leaves. So I'm going to just take, here's how I cane them. I put a little piece of cotton and a twist tie like this. And then I always put one at the bottom. And I'll put others assorted in here if I need them. And then this thing just comes out. See, this is stiff. So now here's the bloom. And now what we're going to do, we're going to look at this bloom. And you're going to tell me, would you stage this with 2 sets of leaves? Looks terrible, doesn't it? Way out of proportion. So I would have done this at home, but I wanted to demonstrate that. I would have taken these off And now I have a nice long stem that will hit this frog in the bottom. So I can wedge it much easier. So the other reason I thought this was no. That is not a set of leaves. That's really 2 spur leaves. And that was the other reason I brought this. We need a garbage can. We need a garbage can. The next question with this bloom is, would you take this spur leaf off? I'm going to walk around with it. Now see, this thing's going to sit in here. Regardless of what we do, it's going to sit in this vase on those bottom 2 sets of leaves. So let's just get an idea of what this is going to look like. Again, I'd cut this at just a slight angle, not too big of an angle because you want to grip that frog. And so you could even cut this just a little bit more, or you could leave this for the wedges, or if you wanted more height. So I would probably cut this down more because this has a crooked stem.
Do the leaves touch the side of the vase?
They can, or they don't have to. And that's going to depend on, the situation. But it doesn't matter. So this is what you're going to have, like this. Let me wedge it in there real quick. And then we'll talk about maybe why you wouldn't why I would personally not take these spur leaves off. See, this has a crooked stem. This has a crooked stem, but if you stage it like this, the other thing this bloom is it's top facing. So you're going to want to bloom like this down as far as you can, because you want the viewer to be looking down on this. Remember, 45 degrees is the preferred angle for all dahlias. 45. However, palms, miniature balls, water lilies, the way the judging manual reads, unfortunately, are acceptable. So take that for what it's worth. So in other words, it's going to be a very small deduction if you have a top-facing palm, miniature ball, that's insect damage. This one has to be, as low as I could stage this, to answer your question, I would put this as low as I could. See, that's about as low as I want to go so I can get wedges in there. And I would want this, because it's top facing, it's okay with me if it leans a little forward because it looks at the judge, okay? Does that make sense? I mean, are you understanding the principle anyway? See, these aren't, I don't know if this is written down anywhere, but this is just kind of pleasing. You're trying to present the bloom in the most pleasing fashion you can. So back to the original question. Would you take those spur leaves off? Well, once you take them off, you can't put them back on.
Meaning you've got the little one and the big one. Can you do one of both?
That's really a good point. So, should we take the little one off? I would probably take the little one off because I find it distracting. This one doesn't bother me. It kind of matches the size of the others. This guy looks like, he was an orphan child or something. It doesn't look good. So what I would do, you're allowed to do anything you want. I mean, with the judges, the way I take a spur leaf off is I cut up first and then down. And with that spur leaf, it's probably not going to be too noticeable. It's not going to leave a big scar because it's looking right at the judge. And what else you can do is, if you've got a real sharp knife, you can make this as smooth as possible. And that's why I carry a little sandpaper. So I can sand that. make it as smooth as can be. And I'm not going to tell you to use a marker on that or a piece of charcoal, but it's an idea, isn't it? Anyway,
Would you have possibly taken those big leaves off 6 weeks ago?
it leaves a scar, and then you got to deal with the scar. Now, if a spur leaf is just in a god-awful place and you know it's coming off, especially if it's real close to the bloom, I'll take those off early because I know the bloom is going to cover them and I don't want it to mess up the petal formation. You know, a lot of dahlias throw spur leaves right at the bloom, at the bud, or within an inch. I take those off right away. Or if I see one that's real small, I'll take those off early if I catch it. But see, I think that looks kind of nice. Now, if we were to take this off, and here's why I would not take that other spur leaf off. I'm going to walk around. If I take that off, there ain't no way I'm hiding it. You see, I take this. Look at that big hitch in the stem. Judge is going to look at that and go, "Well, we really got a crooked stem." But you don't think about the crooked stem when you're looking at the spur leaf. So it's all about making judges not focus on the negatives, make them focus on the positives.
I agree. I like the balance.
Isn't the balance a lot better? Better with one set of leaves and a spur leaf? Take one spur leaf off? I'm good with that. Put your entry tag on. And what I was saying, how you can use them to hide, we don't have any of those little, I probably have some in here. I have everything in here. Yeah, I've got rings in here, Sean. Here's the rings that you attach the tags to. Okay? Another little show trick. Take this, because nobody can see who made the bloom. You take this little wire gizmo, put it through there. Now you're ready to put it on here. So where are you going to put this?
A little slit on the bottom.
If you're an engineer, that's exactly where you put it. If you're a florist, you'd probably say, and you're looking at that exhibit, now this is pretty good because this leaf, you can move this leaf and it kind of covers that wedge. You know, you could actually take that leaf. See how I bent that leaf out? So when you're looking straight ahead at that, you can't really see the wedge. But say if this leaf wasn't here. Say if I had this leaf and it was back here. Now when you're looking at this, what do you see? The wedge is ugly, isn't it? Some shows won't let you have a wedge that high out of the container. So what can you do? You take this tag, put it over here on the stem, open it up, hook it on there, let it come down like that. Now look at that entry. I'd move this leaf, and you can bend these leaves a little bit. You can get a little, takes a bit of practice, but you can bend that leaf down. Better? Everybody agree? Okay. All right.
You're always looking at it from the direction, are the judges not allowed to move it?
Oh, the judges, when you put a bloom on the table, that's why you have to wedge them so good. You're going to put it on that table. They're going to come along and they're going to make space on that table because everybody's going to be bunched up. That bloom is going to be moved probably a minimum of a half dozen times. And if the wedges on this thing aren't real, I would put more wedges in this. I would have this thing wedged all the way around so a monkey could grab this and it's not moving. But see, for now, I'm not going to take the time to go through all those wedges and figure out to get 4 wedges. But they're going to move this bloom like crazy. And you know, some judges, I always assume when I'm judging that if I get a bloom and it's cockeyed, this one doesn't cockeyed too well, but if I get a bloom that's way off, I know the guy didn't put it up there like that, or the lady. So I'll restage it. It's in the manual, you're probably not supposed to do that. But as a judge, I know that it was damaged and moving, and it's not the exhibitor's fault. So I will restage that. to get it straight for them.
Something I've seen in judging, especially obviously, sometimes actually run their wedges will have that bottom set of leaves coming out of the base. It's got to be above the base. Like Tony has it there, I've seen it where they've actually had the leaves down inside the base coming out, and that's going to judge for it.
Yeah, they don't like the leaves coming down from inside the vase out, is what Randy's saying. And it's another good point to whoever brought that up. These dahlias, and I can't encourage you enough to exhibit. You're going to be a much better grower. You're going to see varieties grown to perfection. It's going to help you choose which ones you want in your garden. But exhibiting will really help. The other thing that will really help you is judging, because to be a good exhibitor, you got to know what judges want. And one of the principal tenets of judging, the core tenet really, is that, and Ron and I are going to do this in a week, but you're supposed to get back as far as you can and look at that bloom and see what hits you about it or doesn't hit you about it. And I'll tell you, from back here, that looks like a pretty nice bloom. We've got it staged so that even though it's top facing, it's pleasant, it's not up real high, it's balanced. And then you start walking closer and you say, well, geez, I see a hole in this piece of foliage here and maybe some shading over here. My point is that faults that you see from a distance are always more harsh, more severe than faults that you have to look like this. So really, we all view our dahlias, on a kitchen table. You view them from a distance. You rarely are looking at your dahlias like this. Boy, this is really a nice bloom, unless you're Mr. Magoo, You just don't do that. All right, second bloom. In the same vein, I brought this one. This is another seedling. It's probably not making the cut. And this is the third year, and I've kind of decided it's just never. I've had some beautiful blooms of this, but it's not consistent, and I'm kind of tired of it. And it kind of has a tendency to have really long stems for me, and they don't like to be real straight without a lot of coaxing. So this will just demonstrate. I want to get another vase, honey. Big vase. One big vase. So we take our canes apart, and now we're going to decide always how many sets of leaves, spur leaf, what to do. Now it's pretty obvious on this. This dahlia is so out of proportion. And then look at this dahlia here too. This dahlia, this stem here, just barely. So I'd have to stage that. I'd have to stage, like Randy said, the leaves will be coming out of the wedges. That's not ideal. So what I'd probably end up doing is trying to wedge this thing up here, but it's going to be a nightmare because it's a tall dahlia and it's going to want to do this because it's not anchored at all at the bottom on that frog. Does that make sense?
If the stem where the leaves, can you put something in the bottom of the stem to lift it up?
Did you see this presentation? Well, it's common sense, but I think there would be a lot of people that would think that something like this was not acceptable, where you brought dowel rods and you stuck it up and cut it off here, and they would probably consider this the wiring of a stem or something because I'm using a piece of fiberglass. But this would work. You're right. I'd take my pair of clippers if this was wood, cut it down and make that thing, I'd extend that stem. No, they never see it. It's just a matter of trying to be ethical. Honey, what did you do? Oh, here they are. Where are those stems that I had, honey? Those stems. You know the stems that you said, what did you bring these things for? I had them right over there. Did you throw them in the garbage? Huh?
Or you could use this thing.
or a piece of oasis. Honey, I had 3 stems, and you said, what did you bring these for?
Stems?
Blank stems.
What?
Oh, I had them right over here, guys. I put them here with my own 2 eyes. Do you have a bucket of garbage? Yeah, because I don't blame you for throwing them away. But you can do stuff like this, guys. You know, I don't think there's anything wrong with taking a piece of stem and sticking it up in there, cutting that off. I don't know. Senior judges, what do you think of this? You do it? It's natural material and it's dahlia material. Stems are usually around. So we needed about this much more. So I'm going to cut that off. I made an extension. And now, still a little too long, I would say.
Is that going to draw water?
What?
Is that going to draw water?
No. But see, the dahlia stems are like bamboo. They're hollow. The water is going to come in from around the periphery. This one, it'll draw some water, but it ain't going anywhere. So then we got it to about there, was about where we want it. Now back to the question, what do you do with that spur leaf? Absolutely. Why would we leave it? It would look, and you know, we can do that too. If you want me to just make these things look, you can see, and I probably should. Huh?
Just cover it. Cover it with your hand.
Way out of proportion. You need this spur leaf to make this acceptable viewing-wise, right? And if you remove that spur leaf, you're in the same situation you were before. Look at the crook you're going to leave in that. There's no amount of sanding that's going to straighten that. You're done. So this has to stay. Now you can take these spur leaves, believe it or not, and you can bend them over like this. Look at it. You like it bent over like that? I don't even have the thing facing you guys. Not the greatest flower, but you like it like that? Or do you like it where it's kind of drawing your eye towards the bloom? I think it needs to be like that. Who thinks it needs to be up? Who thinks it likes it folded over? Up.
Now, when you present that, would you have the spur leaf side, or would you have this spur leaf where they're looking at it?
Well, you have to have the bloom facing the judge. I have no choice. The bloom has to face the judge. So this spur leaf has to be off to the side. Unless I wanted to screw around with it and try to move it. You know, you can move them, but you have to run the risk of breaking them. Then this thing is shot. This wedge is way too big. I just threw these in here just so you can get an idea. You really want your wedges not showing and inconspicuous. But I'm not going to take the time, like I said. Wedging takes a while and it's an art. But you'll have a lot less frustration if you have longer stems. If you have short stems, they're going to want to go like this, and you're going to be really frustrated. Next.
So do you do this when the judges are like looking at you and they're doing all this?
That's why I get a table in the corner as far away from the points as I can. I don't want them seeing all the cheating I'm doing. You know? No, I think we all do that. See, I broke that leaf getting this out because I forgot I had to put it under, because this is another one of those short-stemmed dahlias. See, these are center blooms for me, and I want the laterals coming out, so I don't have long stems on my first blooms. Did you get a small vase?
So you don't top?
I rarely top. I rarely top.
I got that impression when you were in the garden. Everybody should top.
Well, I think what works best for me is not necessarily what works best for everyone. Now, see, this is too, I broke that darn You know, I don't want to give you a bad impression about how I wedge dahlias, but I don't want to take the time. I'd spend the whole evening here getting these wedged
Put a
up.
wedge in there to hold that.
Just now, just so we can talk about judging principles. But now, what's wrong with this bloom when you look at it? Severe fault on bloom angle, right? It's clock facing, what they call clock facing, because down facing the bloom is actually looking at the devil. Clock facing means it's like the clock was mounted on the wall and you're looking at the clock. And this thing's clock facing. So it's got a little bit of an angle. It's not exactly at 0, but it's probably at 15, 20 degrees. It's not 45. So I mean, what would you do to make this acceptable? Because the first thing I notice when I look at this bloom is, God, it's clock facing. Stage it back. Stage it back like this. That's okay. I'm just going to say I want to stage it back. Now, you can't get too carried away with the staging back. You can go 10, 15 degrees and get away with it. But does that look a little better?
Yes.
Just with a 15-degree angle to the back. And judges are not going to fault you because, he doesn't have that pin exactly straight up. They're gonna. What you don't want them to do is they're going to be back here. You got your 3 judges. They're standing back here and they're going, "Oh man, that bloom is clock facing." This way, at least, they may not say that. They may, depending on what it's up against.
Is there something you can do to push that up earlier? See it's coming.
Yeah, that's a whole different lecture about how you would put something underneath this when it's developing. You have to know your varieties and actually cane that thing at a 45 so that it would be ideal. But see, this is more just to give you an idea of what happens when your blooms aren't the best, when you haven't had time to mess around with them. Any questions on that?
Can you bring your own wedges? Like I hear you
Yeah.
talk about the wedges,
Yeah,
and the show provides them, but can you bring your own?
yeah, definitely. And some guys do. And some shows I've been actually have styrofoam wedges, which really cut into the thing. They work quite well, but they're not. I don't know how environmentally friendly styrofoam is, and they don't hold up real well because every time somebody presses one in, they leave a ring on it, and so you can't use them very over and over. Wood wedges are virtually indestructible.
The only way you could get your wedges back is to show up when the show's over and you're tearing it down. Then you could run around and get the wedges out.
Yeah, you just have to be a carpenter and cut your own wedges, is what Jackie's saying, because you're not going to get them back. Because when they tear down these shows, all the wedges go into one big box, so you end up donating them to the show. That's a good point, honey. Well, let's take this big one next. It didn't take you long to, you didn't, yeah. Well, we're going to put this in a vase, and then you guys are going to tell me the biggest flaw of this flower. I mean, it's a nice, impressive flower. This is impressive. The petal count isn't the greatest, but it's a good flower.
Rubbish.
It's not a cabbage. It's a good dahlia. I wouldn't grow it if it was a cabbage.
What about this?
We're going to talk about that, honey. All right. So again, because my laterals were coming out of here, and I'm looking forward to the real show season. So I had to cut this with a short. So if I was going to show 2 sets of leaves with this, I would have to do something like shove something up here and make this thing like this. And maybe I should do that now just so we can. That worked out better than I thought. See, that's without a wedge. These vases were designed to not use wedges with, but they don't work.
Yeah.
They don't work. All right, so let's look at this. Everybody just take a second, take a deep breath, look at this bloom, and tell me Tell me what its biggest problems are.
It's got no angle.
It's got no angle. It is almost completely top facing. It's probably at 85 degrees, 80 to 85 degrees. And that, really, when you look at that, it's unfortunate. If that was at 45, I think it would be better. What do you think about the leaves if I didn't have this? I have no idea what caused this in my garden this year. It all came on within 3 days, on this, all the same, all over the garden, and then it all went away, turned into this. I emailed Ron pictures. He had Hanu look at it. Consensus is it's not virus. That's, yeah, what's going on. I think it was environmental, where we got real wet and something happened. I don't know if it was too wet or it wilted too much. Maybe it was, we had those 95-degree days around then. I don't know if some of the chloroplasts just died, but something happened. But I mean, this bloom like this, you could make an argument if you could take that, you could not look at that yellow. You could say, you want enough foliage to be able to balance that bloom, and that's really not too bad. I mean, I don't have it straight right now, but I mean, that's really not too bad. But with those yellow leaves, come on, you can't leave those. That's terrible. The other thing is, in this exhibit, you're going to see what happens. This is a good illustration. You'll see what happens when you take a big top-facing bloom like this, and you get rid of this stuff. You get rid of that stuff, and then I can't believe I'm showing you guys all my tricks. No, I'm just joking, really. I'm always willing to share whatever I'm doing, guys. Okay. I think from a bloom angle perspective, staging this bloom down does wonders for it. Now, I haven't gotten in front of it to look, but I can tell you that, especially for our taller judges, when a taller judge looks at this, and especially we're going to do the opposite of the clock facing, down facing, what you would do with this one is you may want to stage it a little crooked forward so you don't see how top facing it is. So now you look at that thing, and it doesn't look too bad. All of a sudden, that big top face doesn't look too bad. You understand that? The downside, I think overall, I think if I didn't have the yellow, I would have left 2 sets just because it's more impressive. But the bloom angle is much better like this. But these leaves aren't good either because, they're kind of coming on at one. There's nothing on this side except the pig ear. There's no balance on this bloom. Now you may be able to steal a head table spot with something like this if there's no good double A's. It's a clean bloom. I don't see anything too much wrong with it. It's clean. How about the pig's ear? Surprised nobody asked me. Would you take that off? Let's just leave it down. That's a little, I would not stage it down that much, but you could. I personally would probably leave that. And as little help as it is to put foliage on this side, I think it's something. I would, a little bit. And I would probably try to make it look bigger than it was by, I would butterfly it out. See, I would squeeze that, buddy. And I would say, come on, show yourself. Get as big as you can, Does it look better? All right, so that's how we would do this one. We'd stage it forward, leave the pig's ear. I could hide that pig's ear. If I cut that pig's ear off, you wouldn't notice it. Talking is very important. Yes, the big red. The big red one was really Would have been a nice flower 2 days ago. But I just brought it again because of demonstration purposes. I'm just trying to think what we want to demonstrate next. Yeah, let's just take big yellow here. I'm trying to relay principles of staging, rather than a rule book of staging, just stuff. And everybody's going to have different ideas on this and different degrees of proficiency. The really great stagers, they see it right away. We had a fellow and his wife in this society a number of years ago, Rudy and Shirley Bredenbeck, that were one of the best. They're in the top 2 of all the people I've seen stage in 50 years. They were incredible. Rudy would take a pair of scissors or a pen and he would make every leaf go in the direction he wanted to. And every leaf was forcing your eye to look at the bloom. And he did it so fast. Rudy was not the greatest to put on a demonstration like this. Back in those days, people that it was a lot more cutthroat, a lot of competitiveness, and secrets were better kept secrets. But I used to sometimes get close to Rudy and I'd watch him. I just say, God, they're good. The other one was Gilly Simmons, man. Gilly Simmons from down south, the My Beverly, My Marie, and a whole bunch of other ones. I was at a dahlia show one time with Gilly, and I was getting down to the end, and it was Monday, it must have been 2 o'clock in the morning, and he's rolling. I never met him. Winningest boys basketball coach in South Carolina history. Just to give you an idea of the personality. Huge in the South, winningest high school basketball coach. He comes up to me and I got this bloom that was kind of a mess. And he said, "What are you going to do with that?" And he didn't even introduce himself. "What are you going to do with that?" I said, "I don't know, maybe just leave it." He takes his hands and he puts it in a bucket of water. He takes that bloom and he just, in his hands, and he starts like this on the bloom. I mean, the petals, and I am just like this. I almost fainted. I said, "This guy come in off the street?" And then he takes a ballpoint pen and he starts going around all these petals. And then he puts it in a vase after about 15 minutes. And the thing is drop dead beautiful. I mean, it's perfect. All the petals are in arrangement. "Hi, I'm Gilly Simmons." We became really, really close friends until he passed a number of years ago. He taught my son a lot about basketball, and I used to visit him down in South Carolina. Great guy. But the great ones are really, really good. See, these vases were made for these kind of dahlias. So you could actually stage this without a wedge. See, because it hits that frog just right. It's got that big stem. The reason I brought this, unfortunately, it was supposed to rain. I put a cover over it, and the wind took it. I didn't have it anchored well enough, and so it burned the face of this bloom. But I thought it would be worthwhile bringing something like this, because you're going to have some damage on some blooms that really aren't being as negligent as I was. Sometimes it just happens. And with a good pair of scissors, I just wanted to point out, and this is best done at the show and not at home, because sometimes when you cut a white or a yellow dahlia, as it matures in like 12 hours, you're going to see that cut because it's damaged. So you'll never make this look good. You can't just cut all that off and have it look normal. But you could help it a lot. And I'm not going to go here and ruin the whole thing. But what I wanted to show you is you can take these things and just snip off the brown. And if you do it on just a few, very few judges are going to catch that. If you don't do that, their eyes are going to go right to that one petal, and they're going to say, "Look at this brown petal." And good luck. I'm telling you, I know these guys. So you can do that. Try to cut it at an angle. Try to cut it at the show. and clean it up. And then there's always the question about, I mean, you look at this bloom from the back, and what do you see in the back? Imagine this wasn't all burned. This would be a really nice bloom. Nice angle. Depth's okay. It really needed another day. But these don't look too good, do they, guys? This is a semi-cactus bloom. Look at this. I would probably get rid of that guy. And then I'd look and I'd say, I don't like you either. Better? Better? Jackie would take one more petal, and I usually let her take all the petals she wants. All right. Well, we're winding down here.
How many do you tend to show? And is it one of those where you're like, oh my gosh, I have to show these? Normally I would do 3 or whatever.
I've been to shows. You know, I'm a big proponent. Randy and I talk about this all the time. That, you know, you support the show. I've gone to shows with under 10 blooms, and none of them were very good. And I knew I didn't have a snowball's chance in hell of winning anything decent. But I go because I want blooms for the table for the public to see. So you take what you get. For me to be really competitive, 25 to 35 blooms. But that's not that many. You know, it's usually 6, 7 cans. Randy and Kathy, how many do you take? They are Trojans, I'll tell you. Would you get me a big vase, honey? No, that doesn't have water. Okay, this is Liz Evangelista. And Liz is kind of a funny dahlia. I'll walk this around. She kind of has a tri-leaf, which is a minor leaf fault. Most judges don't mind it. Jenny, the Bill Traff dahlia that's real popular out west, does that. But you see how there's 3 leaves coming out of this node? Just a little step. Liz does that. Personally, I think a lot of times, see how there's 3 sets coming out of here? And then 2 sets? But Liz will throw a lot of 3 sets at the top. I personally think it frames the bloom really well because it makes it seem like the bloom is coming out of all that foliage. So it is technically, could be a minor fault, but most judges will not fault that if it's pleasing to the eye.
So in this case, you probably take the bottom 2 off so you don't notice the 3 over the 2.
No, I would leave that. I wouldn't worry about it. That's been something that I haven't seen enforced very much. But this one here, now this is a good bloom. It's got a lot of center left. And when I grow Liz at home, a lot of times I'll take the early petals off. Now this has lost what we call substance in the back. It's not springy. It's drooping. It's wilting in the back. This is never going to win anything. So there's nothing wrong with going back here and just start plucking the bad ones out. And Liz there was a dahlia called Luther that was introduced down in Columbus. And Dick Westfall told me, I think he said he pulled 90 petals one time and won best of show with it. It just had so many petals, endless petals. So the lesson from this dahlia, what I was saying is, don't be afraid to pull some of those, like we did in the last bloom, but sometimes you got to pull a lot of them. Now, this probably would have more. This was a little extreme case, and I sent it here more for just demonstration purposes. But I think you'll have to agree that that's not as bad as before I pulled all those petals out, where she was drooping down to here, and it's still full and reflexed enough. You know, you could even keep pulling, but eventually you'll get to a point where, man, the judge will say, but this guy pulled a lot of petals. But I mean, you see what I'm saying? I think it's looking better and better.
But Tony, that bloom, not put it on the table at somebody's
That's a really good point.
The audience will love it.
Well, and that's a great point. You know, you take your stuff and we cut stuff that we know can't win, but we bring it as long as we have room because we're trying to put on a show for the public. You know, and that's this isn't all about winning and losing. Otherwise, I mean, you could sharpshoot this thing. I could have 35 flowers and say, Jack, I don't feel good today. I'm picking the 6 best and we're leaving the rest at home because I don't want to screw around with them. But I don't do that. Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, that's what I do, and a lot of things you bring, there's no other flower like that show. So
And you'll get a ribbon. Sometimes it'll even get out of class. That's happened to all of us, where you say, geez, I'm glad I wasn't even going to bring that, you know. But I think this looks better after we pull the bunch. That's why I brought this bloom. It was well past its prime, but I thought you could see what happens with just some pulling. Don't be afraid to pluck petals in the back. You know, I would on something like this, and my reasoning is because it's got the stem length, and I really like the way it balances that bloom. I mean, we used to show 3 sets of leaves when I first started exhibiting. More than half the exhibits have had, you remember that? 3 sets of leaves. We're down to 2. I have a really hard time with 1 set of leaves.
Well, with the 3 sets of leaves, you're achieving balance, with the size of the bloom, the stem. I think it creates a lot of balance in that presentation.
I mean, who would want to take those bottom 2 sets off? Would anybody think the bottom 2 sets would do harm to that?
I'm just wondering if judges are gonna say it's too much leaf. Like,
Maybe a
too-
West Coast
too
judge, not our judges. And that's another good point, and that wasn't just a joke. There's a big difference in style from coast to coast. They look at us and say, why don't they just dig the whole plant up and bring it in, you know? I've heard these comments, you know. Then I go out to their show and I say, geez, you got 2 airplane wings on your bloom, huh? That's really nice. You know, I could give it back. What?
Would you ever groom the leaves? Like, there's one that's in the back, kind of prick. Would you groom the leaves?
Oh, that's her department. And there's nothing wrong. This has a lot of foliage, right? I'm so glad you brought that up. So, you want to do this, Jack? I'm grooming his leaf.
Oh, yeah.
You could. The other old trick is if you have you can make it jagged if you have time. And Ken Red always likes to take his thumbnail where there's a bug that bite on the thing and make thumbnail cutouts to just get rid of the bug bites. This is all stuff you learn. So what I did is I cut that one off. You can't even tell where it is. It was back here. And now this one's kind of cut up too. And you could...
You have smaller scissors.
Yeah, I'm just trying to, in the interest of time here, guys, I got a few more blooms and I want to help people stage some of this other stuff. But doesn't that look better than the bug holes? And you know, you can see it if you look for it, but your eye doesn't go to it. Your eyes went right to it from the front row and you guys are 8 feet away. So judges are going to see that too. So that's an excellent, excellent point. You know, don't give them something to focus on that's negative. You know, you want to minimize the negative faults, accentuate the positive attributes. That make sense? Okay.
I want to add on to a stupid question that I just asked.
No stupid
He
questions.
gave me a great answer, but I want to just make sure I get this right. So I was reading this premiums thinking that this is what you had to pay to enter your bloom. You pay a fee.
You pay me all those.
Right. You pay to get in, but then you have like unlimited blooms.
Cuyahoga is a special with our dahlias. Tell them what it is, Jerry, how Cuyahoga has an arrangement with us.
Well, they pay us $600 to be there. That's the reason I like quantity. Quality's nice, quantity is really essential. We pay you back your $12 registration fee, and then whatever blues you get $3 for every blue ribbon, $2 for every red ribbon, $1 for every white ribbon that you win. So we'll put the, oh, yes, it's money making proposition.
But you pay 12 to get in, and I can bring 30
don't you try to win there? Stay away from formal decks, balls, and like the more popular stuff. But if you have water lilies, micros, some of the ones that orchids, like stellars, not everybody grows those. So you might be the only person who brought one anyway.
I don't want to be blue. You're blue, and you're now mad that you're blue, right?
Well, I'm mad I can't be a novice.
Yeah.
You can be a novice at Summit County. You can be a novice for 3 years at most of the shows.
Like
Cuyahoga. That's a fair, see, and they want really, really raw people.
And they give you giant ribbons. Like you feel so accomplished.
I think they give you the same reason they give the best cow or something, don't they? Something like that. This is Jackie's Red Devil. And
You have a question behind you.
oh, I'm sorry.
For Cuyahoga, so you guys have the bases there, so I would just have to bring blooms?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
$12, bring them all, babe. That's what I'm hearing.
This is Jackie's Red Devil. Now, what did we say about balls, miniature balls, palms, and water lilies? Topward facing is okay. But no. Is there any doubt that a 45-degree ball, especially ball dahlias? I mean, you take like the one that Mark Breckenbrod had, Clearview Daniel, that ball dahlia grows tall. And to get to the first set of leaves are airplane wings. They're little leaves. If you show that thing with 2 sets of leaves, it's so unbalanced. So you've got to go down to the second set of leaves, and you've almost always got an exhibit that's high. And then that thing, like most balls, they like the top. And so what do you do? How do you like looking at a bloom like this? It's not really very attractive. So even with the ball dahlias, I would stage this. This is a little top facing. I'd stage it a little bit forward. I think our foliage is nice. I think it's balanced. I wouldn't take the second 2 leaves off, set of leaves off. Any questions? I want to be able to get to some of your blooms. Or we could just get to your blooms now if you've had enough of my my talking.
You must have gone crazy in Australia when they took all the leaves off.
Well, you know, let me tell you a funny story about Australia. Me and Menzo used to have really in-depth conversations. So I go to,
Blooms for Australia.
well, I didn't take blooms. I went to the New Zealand National Show, and then I went to 5 Australian shows just to see how they do dahlias down there. And the Australians, believe it or not, they don't have to, they're like the English. You don't need any foliage, but it's optional. So John tells me, I says, John, what are you doing? He's out in his garden on show morning. He's going through his whole dahlia garden. He's got a box with a wet paper towel or paper towels, and he's cutting off leaf sections from all the prettiest foliage he has, and he puts it down, puts a wet paper towel, and he fills up the box, and he's got all these leaf sets. He puts the sets together. Then he gets to the show, he stages the lollipop, and then he, like a florist, he puts the foliage in from something else. And I said, John, wouldn't it be a lot more challenging to the exhibitor if you had to bring the foliage that was on the darn thing? And when you introduce a dahlia, you know, it matters. Then it matters stem length and all that. But, you know, that's a different conversation. But that's to your point. Well, should we do one more, or what do you want to do?
What are these down there?
Those are what not to bring to your show. But
Oh, let's bring this.
What?
it's a
Bring these?
Challenge for Tony. Make those look good.
Well, we're going to talk about that, okay? The first thing, and Jess reminded me that a lot of people weren't at the thing today, and so the first way to make these things look good is it started weeks ago. And you can't do this, guys. You can't do this. You can't do this. This doesn't, you know.
You're never allowed to come to the farm.
I mean, you know, this is, you know, you can get these big ones out. Usually, sometimes you can't even go. That's a trick, but rocking back and forth, you can usually get. So you can't just pull them in one. These are really hard. And you know what, you can do that. So you got to do that. So here's your stem for the show. You know, it's better than what I held up first. But see, this should have been disbudded. So we're going to, Josh, is it okay if I? Okay. But this is another example, and Jess was saying, show you how to disbud. Every dahlia comes up and it has, most of them, some have 2. Most of them have 3. The middle one is usually the biggest and the strongest. I know a lot of you know this and it's probably boring you, but so see, here's the center bud. So you take these 2 buds out and let this hasn't matured. I think Jess just brought it for demonstration purposes. So at least do that even for cut flowers. If you want long stems on your cut flowers, then you disbranch down at least 1 more. Okay? And you do that stuff. You do that stuff at home. And I don't know what you do with the stems that want to go. That's why I don't grow open centers. I can't stand that. You know, people who exhibit, we're nuts. You know, we're certifiable. We're not normal people. All right. Now, let me see if I missed any principles I wanted to make sure. Sets of leaves, spur length, high or low angle. Oh, here's one thing I forgot to talk about. Before you take any bloom to the table, and I might as well mention that now, even though it's out of sequence, you've got to take that bloom, and you have really got to. The judges, if they're trained properly and they're doing their job, they're going to approach this bloom from the front, and they're going to look at it from a distance, assess what they like, and then they're going to go like this. They're going to take these tall, big guys, they're going to put them on the ground, and they're going to look at them overhead like this. And they're going to stare, and they're going to stare, and they're going to say, which center do you like best? Well, I like that one. Well, I kind of like that one. Don't you think that one's a little oblong? It's not oblong, but it's a little thin, and you have that kind of discussion going on. So you've got to examine your blooms from all the angles of the judge. You'd be surprised, you put the thing on the ground, and there might be a bug in here. And that's when you got these things, you just go in there and you say, I got to get that rascal out of there. You know, he's going to really show up. There might be some dirt that you want to brush out. That's why I've got some little brushes in here. So you examine it from the top, and then the judge is going to take this thing, and he's going to look at the side of it. He's going to say, he's going to put all those in, he's going to say, side looks good. Look at this side. He'll look at that side. And then he'll look at the back. And then if he's really good, he'll pick it up. And he'll say, look at this guy left a cotton ball up there. And then they'll have an argument as to that disqualify him. You know? Instead of just grabbing it and throwing it on the floor, somebody will want to disqualify the bloom. That guy left a cotton ball up there. It's not hard to do, guys. But the thing I wanted to stress that I skipped was you got to examine your bloom from every angle before you put it on the table to be judged. And when you take it to the table, don't carry it like this. Chances are it'll crack off or somebody will get in front. 2 hands, one here, like this. You walk it over the table like it's worth something, you know? Walk it over, put it on the table. All right. I just want to make sure I didn't miss any of the points I thought were important. Oh, to mist or not mist your blooms before you take them to the table. I've done it both ways. I don't think it matters. Do what you like on that. Okay.
You want to show them what you mean by that?
Misting.
Bottles out here. That's right.
Before I would put this on the table, I would take this bloom. This thing probably needs to be primed. See, now it's spraying. And I would mist this entire bloom with distilled water to help keep it fresh. Again, you don't have to do all this stuff, you guys. You're just starting out. I'd mist them all. They'd all get misted and put on the table. Okay? That's what I mean by misting. Now, I'd like to say a few words about multiple blooms and just the principles of multiple blooms, okay?
I have a real quick question.
Yeah.
When your flower is being judged, where are you the exhibitor and where the judge is? Or are you not there?
I'm usually on their right shoulder saying, what the hell are you talking about? There's nothing wrong with that. No, Randy will tell you, we always laugh about exhibitors. They're always trying to like listen to what they're saying and stuff, you know. Usually you're judging and you're judging in a different section, so you're nowhere near the conversation that takes place. And this is a little bit more with the judging seminar. Anytime you're judging a set of blooms, the judges should have a detailed discussion about why they picked the bloom they did, and they should all be in agreement. Every once in a while, you've got to have a vote, and the majority wins. Because every once in a while, you'll get an exhibitor, and he'll come up to you and he'll go, what was wrong with that bloom? And then you as a judge can take the one that won, put them side by side, and you can recreate all that judging lingo that went on and say, that's why we picked this bloom. And I can tell you, I've never had an exhibitor say, well, I think you were wrong. They all go, I get it. I didn't see it that way. So you have to recreate your reasoning. And they do have reasoning. We have usually pretty good judges.
I mean, hopefully you're a clerk or a new judge, because Ron's back here taking names. Trying to get you, because you really learn a lot when you become part of that conversation, even if you're the clerk or writing down.
Jess, which threes do you have?
Is there like a score they give you? Like,
You threw it away? I threw the 3 away?
this part about this?
Maybe 3 of these.
Oh, I can't do those.
You don't get it down.
I said I'd bring you a challenge.
Well, let's do this. Let's talk about 3s, okay? Because they're just,
Pretend.
well, we're going to pretend. Everybody's going to be colorblind, okay? We're going to pretend that all these are the same variety. Because there's a few principles when you exhibit 3s that I think you got to take home with you. There's only like 3 things I want you to take home. The rest is a lot of experience. But first, the main thing when judges pick a multiple, one of the biggest criteria is uniformity. So you try to pick 3 blooms that look exactly alike. And that means diameter, depth. So they look like triplets. That doesn't happen very often. Certain varieties do throw remarkably uniform blooms. And those usually win a lot of triples and 5s and baskets. But say we're going to do a triple here. See, these were brought to the show real nice, all caned up, so none of the foliage would break. I just broke a piece of foliage because I can't get it out of here. Okay. And yeah. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna take the, see, Jess is doing this. She's looking for cut flowers, you know, so I like to tease her. But we're gonna do this. We're gonna, and for the 3s, they usually have oasis in those vases so you can stick them in and arrange them the way you want. But occasionally you'll get people who will arrange a triple in a vase like this. So we're going to use these 3.
Should I take these out?
Yeah, back and forth. We're going to use these 3, and we're going to tell you some principles here of staging triples. And this applies to 5s and on up. The triples are the most common. So what do you notice about these 3 blooms? Assume they were the same.
Not all the same size.
They're all 3 different sizes. Usually what happens is you'll have 2 that are pretty close and one's an oddball. So if the oddball's smaller, what you want to try to do when you're doing triples is take the 2 that are closest together and flank the one that's the oddball. Don't put the 2 that are close and put the oddball on the side. Then it just looks like he didn't belong in the family, okay? So if the oddball is small, I would try to put it closer to the viewer. And this is all because of the principle of perspective. You know, when you see something in the distance that looks real small, as you walk up closer, that tree gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Well, you can fool the judge to a certain extent. Put the smaller bloom closer to him, the other two blooms further away from him if it's small. Now, what if it's big? If it's big, put it further away. And remember to put the one that's the oddball size, flank it by two that are the same size. It's much more pleasing. It doesn't look as bad if you have two that are pretty much the same and then a smaller one in the middle up front. You see that? Now what if I did it like this? I wish we had three of the same kind. But just try to just view the size. And what if we did that? See the difference? Looks bad. So you want to flank the odd size bloom with the ones that are the closest together. I think that's a really important principle. If it's big, further away. If it's small, closer to the viewer. And this is something that drives me crazy. It's so easy to do this, especially with Oasis, is you want every one of the blooms that are in this triple, you want them all to be facing that judge from a 3-foot distance. So you don't want to put these, I got to put my back to you guys. This is going to be hard to do without Oasis and trying to do it quickly, but we're going to do it. This is what I mean. You don't want this bloom looking really right at the judge, and then look at this guy. He's looking at the clerk down in the other aisle, you know. You don't want to do that. You want this guy to be looking right at the judge. You want this guy to be looking right at the judge. So everybody's looking at the judge's big nose. Okay? Does that make sense? And then the other thing you should talk about is negative space. What is negative space, you flower arrangers? It's where there's just air, where there's just a void, where there's no flower material or plant material. It's space. It's just space with nothing in it. It's negative space. That's the term I think I'm just trying to get it so that it's... But when you do this with the negatives, here's how we would do this. These are pretty close in size. This is smaller. It's towards us. All of them are going to be facing the judge. And then you want the space between these blooms to be as close as you can to equal. So the distance, this distance should equal this distance. And these two on the ends should be exactly the same height. Okay? Same height. Looking at the viewer. I almost got it to stay, but it won't stay. Give me a wedge over there, honey. No, you don't want all three of them to be the same height usually. So see, these are frustrating. Jess is trying to drive me crazy. But this is, see, if I was fine-tuning this in Oasis, it would be here. Can you see that from back? Okay. For no, and see, same height? All these blooms should be looking at me. I don't want this bloom center looking out that way.
And wouldn't you also look at the foliage and, like, you wouldn't have a whole bunch of foliage on one and a little bit on the other?
Usually Jackie and I address the foliage last. We take off what we don't like and, you know, leave what we do. I don't worry about I worry more about getting, and see, this one's a little high, so this one has to come up just a touch. But see, I don't have Oasis, so nothing's going to stay. But I think you get the idea. Everybody get the idea? If you don't take anything, that's the principle of threes. You know, equal spacing, flank the oddball, and have the blooms looking at the judge. Good?
And if you stick it in the Oasis, you can't pull it out unless you push it down in further.
Okay, I'll be at the Cuyahoga Fair at 7:30 in the morning to help anyone who needs help and is just feeling like they need help, okay? I'm not exhibiting, so I'm going to be free to help all you folks out. Don't be shy. Don't make me get up that early and drink coffee all the way and have nothing to do.
You showed
Don't even try picking it up.
Oh, Jess's bucket?
Yeah, it's,
Oh, my buckets? My buckets, I designed this myself many, many, many years ago. I'm going to take them home probably.
oh, gotcha.
And see, I actually made frogs down below. So it's kind of the vase principle where there's nails. It might be easier. I could walk around, so if there's any questions. But see, this is just a linoleum tile that I cut to a circle, glued on the bottom, but the glue, no matter what glue I went, it eventually would get. So I put this thing on because what happens with these plates in the bottom, if you use chicken wire and stuff, they'll want to turn, and then that bloom that you have anchored will go sideways or off. So I put this as strictly to notch that so this thing can't spin.
It's all kinds of different.
Oh, when you go to a show, start looking at how people bring them to the show.
So what does, oh, the plate on the bottom?
Is a linoleum tile, and those are roofing nails. You know what they look like.
Okay.
These are just dowel rods. I drilled holes, and I attach them with that thing. That's just a towel, and I put nails up through the frog to make a frog. I got frogs underneath each one where I tie them, so they can't twist. You don't have to do all this, though. Just get them there in one piece. We'll stage them.
County fair, I mean, that's what. Oh, it's the 13th. Yes.
Yeah. Does anybody want to practice? Oh, another thing before we do any further. Did you not? I should have brought this up, but this is really a hard concept to grasp, so pay attention, okay? Big flowers, big vase. Little flowers, little vase. You'll remember that one. Okay. Oh, God. Huh?